So, I just watched the Pokemon Black movie, Victini and Reshiram, and let me just start by saying this, okay? When I saw Pokemon White, the movie, it was in theaters, and I was all hyped up, and I was excited, and I was feeling good, and I had the perfect seats. And when I saw the Pokemon Black movie just now, I was at home watching it on a 23-inch CRT standard definition tube set on a VHS tape because I recorded it when it aired on Saturday the 10th because I was on the road when the movie aired on Cartoon Network, and so of course I'm watching it on a VHS tape, recorded off TV on a standard definition small tube set, and it's on television, so there are commercial breaks too. So, and plus I'm sick. Did I mention that? Uh, yeah. So, and I'm not feeling well, and that probably influenced my opinion of the movie a lot. And I have to say, based on having seen this movie technically the first time, having seen the other version of it before, a lot of the enjoyment I got out of the first one, I now realize was mostly because I did see it in theaters. And it was just larger than life and really cool. And even in the theaters, I really liked the beginning part where they're just wandering around the town, battling and having fun and getting into hijinks, saving deerling who have wandered onto cliffs. Uh, now I'm going to talk about the differences between the white version and the black version of this film. So, if you don't want spoilers for the things that have been changed between them, you can stop watching now. But really, changes like obviously in the version I saw in theaters, Reshiram was no in the version I saw in theaters, Zekrom was the protagonist, legendary dragon, and in the black version, Zekrom is the antagonist, and Reshiram is the protagonist, and really those roles don't make that big of a difference. And other differences, uh, the villain character guy, the non-committal villain, has a Gothitelle instead of a Reniculus or whatever that thing's called. And aside from that, the biggest difference is at the very in the introduction in the white version of the movie. It starts out in the desert. He starts out like he's out in the desert in the plains, and he's talking to these people out in the desert, and later in the movie, he gets a flashback of when he was visiting another group of people that were out in the Arctic, which for some reason there's an Arctic region of Unova, which makes yes, there are cold regions in Unova, but there's no it's they're in freaking like either the North or South Pole. Well, I'd say the North Pole because they're Arctics and polar bears are from the North Pole, but whatever. Point is, in the one version he starts out in the desert, and then later on he has a flashback of going to the Arctic. In this one, the whole beginning scene is in the Arctic, and then later on he has a flashback of visiting the people in the desert. And I have to say that based having seen them both, I think the version where he starts out in the desert is more cinematically exciting. I think that version worked better in theaters than the version where he's in the Arctic. And really, the Arctic version, it really wasn't as exciting or interesting to me. But then again, I wasn't as excited anyway, just because I'm sick and I'm watching a tape of a movie I've technically already seen before, just for the sake of spotting the differences. They should have called these movies. They should have called this Pokemon the Movie Spot the Differences, because that's basically what it is. I really was hoping that they'd take the whole ideals versus truth thing and have some divergent story paths and some different directions the stories could have taken depending on. But really, uh, there's the differences are pretty much negligible, except for in one version you get to see Ash fly around on Zekrom, the other version you get to see Ash fly around on Reshiram. And even when the both dragons are awakened and they fight for a minute, it's not a very long fight. It's pretty quickly resolved that they realize they're both fighting for the same purpose, and they join forces. And really, this movie is boring to me. It was I was consciously aware that I wasn't really enjoying it once the plot kicked in and when I was in the theaters, but now I like really feel it because uh, on this having seen it before and on the small screen, all the stuff at the beginning isn't as impressive or awesome or engaging. I don't really feel like I'm there like I did in the theaters, but let's see. What do I have to say? Pretty much when they get on the flying castle. Now, Pokemon movies tend to take place in a single city or in a single location that the characters are somewhat are trapped in or have to break into. Generally, and like take the Zoroark movie for instance, because it's fresh in my mind. Like they or in like the the fourth movie, like they're in the city, but they go to different places throughout the movie within the city, and discover new places. In this movie, and in the Pokemon Black, in the Reshiram and Zekrom movies, there once the plot kicks in, Ash and his friends are basically stuck in that flying castle for the rest of the movie, and not all, and they there's no place especially interesting they go. Every place Ash goes, we've already seen before. Ash himself has already been there, or we've seen flashbacks of other characters going there. But and even though it's a flying castle, it should be interesting. But it's they're stuck in this castle, and for the like maybe 2/3 of the movie, it's not all that interesting. In fact, when Ash is trying to get the guy flying the castle to stop and let Victini go, that fight scene in that plaza, that gallery inside the castle, it's virtually plagiarized from Pokemon the Movie 2000, The Power of One, when they're on board Lawrence the Third's airship, and when they're in the hall where he's holding the legendary bird trio captive inside those armillary spheres. It basically looks plagiarized directly from that. And in that movie, yes, they were on board the airship for a while, but they left and went other places. Even though they're in that small group of islands, they went to different islands and they were on boats at one point. In some parts, they're flying on Lugia. Excuse. All right. This movie also seems to have a problem explaining things. For instance, they never actually explain why there needs to be a barrier keeping Victini within the city limits. They never explain like why exactly it is that the Sword of the Veil castle is capable of controlling the Dragon Force, and why moving it was such an important thing to have done, and why moving it saved the Dragon Force from getting out of control in the first place, because you'd think that if you control the Dragon Force in one place, you can control it equally as well in another. It, it doesn't explain, like they give you they give you the storybook retelling of the legend of Victini, and then they show you all these flashbacks from during the war. But really, like I said in my other review, basically these flashbacks and storytelling is it's just exposition, and it doesn't feel especially important to what's going on in the present. Like in the Arceus movie, they they showed they told the story of Arceus and the myth of Arceus and Deimos, but and then that had a direct bearing on what was happening now. Whereas here, yes, this relates to what happened back then, but it doesn't. It feels almost like they could have made a better movie just making it about what happened in the past than having the story with Ash and Silent and Iris, who are pretty useless for most of the movie once they get on board the castle and it starts flying around. They they just didn't explain things well enough. Basically, I watched the only reason I watched this movie on TV or recorded it and watched it when I was sick and had nothing better to do was so that I could see the differences and comment on them, and The differences aren't really worthy of note. You know, Reshiram and Zekrom's, they just changed some of the dialogue is changed. You know, to reflect that. You know, to reflect the fact that the movie's based around Zekrom Ash obtaining or befriending Reshiram instead of Zekrom, and the dialogue between Reshiram and Zekrom is switched up a bit, but it's really not that big a deal. They're totally interchangeable. It doesn't affect any of the plot points or motivations or objectives of the characters. And the differences are so negligible between those two movies that I really I have a I thought they'd be more ambitious with the differences. Like how there were some major differences in the games, like one of the whole town was entirely different between the two of them and so forth. In this one, really, the only reason I see that they made two versions was sort of for the black and white gimmick of the opposing ideals versus truth, and so that they could sell two $20 DVDs to little kids who are gonna want to have both versions. And really, I would hope they sell both versions together for $20 because, as far as I'm concerned, it isn't. Both films aren't worth the price of admission. It's basically the same movie, except for I like the version with Zekrom more, just because well, I have fond memories of seeing it in theaters, and I like the intro in the desert better. That's really the only difference between them, and I probably should take a nap now. So that's my opinion of Pokemon Black the movie, Victini and Reshiram, and thank you very much for watching.